Hey y'all, this is Sean. And so before we get into this week's episode, I want to take a moment to speak from the heart about something that has really been sitting heavy with me over the last several weeks. And so if you subscribe to our newsletter, our biweekly newsletter, you know that within our last newsletter, I opened up about a time in my life when I was unhoused as a teen. And so if you've been a listener of this podcast for a while, you know that I also did a solo episode back in season 1, episode 3, where I talked in great detail about my experience with being unhoused. And so within that experience, I also talked about how one person's act of kindness by him offering me a place to stay where I had nowhere else to go completely shifted the trajectory of my life. And so that experience has never left me. It's shaped how I carry compassion, right? It's the reason why I center care in every single thing that I do. And truthfully and honestly, like it really helped shape the mission of Dem Bois. And so when I founded Dem Bois in 2016, it wasn't just about setting up a nonprofit, right? It was about creating like the kind of care and connection that can change somebody's life, just like it once did for me. And so community, I'm calling out on my community to do what community does, right? And so many a times within this podcast, within these past episodes, I've reached out to community and said, hey, community, do what you do, right? I've gotten guests because of this call to community, and I've gotten other things that Dem Bois needed because I called out to my community. And so this instance is not anything different, right? And so a fellow trans man of color, someone who Dem Bois has supported in the past, is scheduled to have gender affirming surgery on June 20th, 2025. And he's currently unhoused. And so unless he secures stable housing, he will not be able to move forward with his surgery because he just doesn't have a place to rest and recover. Right. And so this person has received care packages through our programs. He's also been a past guest on this very podcast. And so for his safety, we're going to keep his identity private. But I promise you, his story, his voice has already touched many of you who've heard this episode and have been impacted by the work that he does in the community. And so this is a moment, community, where he needs us. And so we're looking to raise $5,000 throughout the month of May and into June to help cover his housing costs. And this is not just about him getting through the surgery, right? This is about healing and safety with dignity and with his peace of mind. And so for folks who've had gender affirming surgeries and for folks who don't want to have it, but there are folks who do. And so for folks who've already had gender affirming surgery, myself included, the healing journey is important. It's a stressful moment, but it's also important to have a place to sit, have a place to rest, and not just your body, but rest your mind. And so I always say throughout this podcast and then through other conversations within my life, I always say I'm my brother's keeper. And so this is exactly what being my brother's keeper looks like in practice. So community, I'm asking if you're able to give. I'm asking you to show up for this, brother. So you can go onto our website. That's dembois.org. That's dembois.org. Click the link to say donate, right? And so we have people streaming this episode, right? And so if 100 people give just $10, right? Imagine that impact. And then if those 100 people tell one other person, which turns into another 100 people, right? And this compounds over the time that we're looking to raise funds. And so if maybe you don't have funds, but you say, hey, Sean, I got some leads on housing, or I have some leads on resources, then you can reach out to us and share some of those resources. So you can reach out via email. That's hello@dembois.org. That's HELLO@dembois.org. Right. And if you can't give, if you don't have any resources that you can share, you can also share this message with someone who can. Right. And so this is very important that we show up for community. And it's about helping somebody get back on their feet. It's not just about that. It's helping somebody get back on their feet, but it's not just about that. It's not about charity. This is about community. And so let's show up for someone that in a way that we would want someone to show up for us. And so I'm recording this, and this is May 2025. And so if you listen to this in the future, it's not too late to give, right? Because there's going to be always someone in our community that needs our help. And so that money will go towards someone else, even if you're listening to this in the future. And so I want to say thank you for listening to this message. This is something that's been very, very heavy on my heart over the last several weeks. If you would like to know more information, whether that's location of where this person is located, also you can reach out to us via email, and that's hello@dembois.org. That's HELLO at dembois.org. And so I want to say thank you for listening to this message, and thank you for being a part of Dem Bois family. And so on to the episode. My next guest I had the privilege to sit down with is a formerly undocumented queer, trans, non-binary visual artist. They have been involved in social movement spaces encompassing immigrant, queer, and trans rights struggles for over a decade and infuse much of their work with personal experience and the stories their communities share. Their work has been exhibited at the Getty Museum, the Smithsonian Museum, the Library of Congress, and many other galleries and museums throughout the Americas and internationally. This was a really great episode. I hope that you enjoy.
Dem Bois, Dem Bois, amplifying, transmitting, color voices, yeah, we here making noise, making noise, Visibility equals possibility, you know we them boys,
Welcome to Dem Bois Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Aaron, he, him, his. My next guest is formerly undocumented queer, trans, non-binary visual artist, born in Chile and raised in Florida. They have been involved in social movement spaces encompassing immigrant, queer, and trans rights for over a decade. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
Yes, I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for being here and being vulnerable and sharing your story with the world and just sitting here with me and spending this time. I really appreciate it. So you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for folks?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that was a mighty good introduction. As mentioned, I was born in Chile. Can give you a little bit more of a backstory there. Moved here to the States in 94. So I've been in this country, I think this year will mark 30 years. Being a migrant has played heavily into my story of self and into the art that I make. And queerness and transness definitely in there as well, especially in the last decade. I am back in Florida at the moment. I've been traveling around for a bit the last few years. And yeah, trying to survive. Hopefully at some point thrive.
Trying to survive. Yes, that place seems so familiar. So, could you say your pronouns for folks?
Sure. Yes. They them.
They them. Thank you so much. And so now you're located in Florida, and so you answered my question. You came to the U.S. 30 years ago. That's a long time. It's a long time. And so I love to ask folks, but I want to ask you this first though. How did being undocumented or moving into this country and from Chile, how did that shape your gender journey?
It's interesting. I don't know if gender necessarily came into play right off the bat. By the time I had moved here, I think I had just turned 5. So I was tiny. And I think any conception of gender for me was over my head. And in fact, at the forefront of my mind, probably up until my early teens, which would put me in middle school, was always status, like immigrant status, how to be able to navigate the world in a way that was safe, that wouldn't put me or my family in jeopardy. The jeopardy being getting deported. And so navigating the school system in ways that wouldn't flag us as undocumented, which is kind of scary because there's so many things that could be asked of you, specifically your social security number. And like, yeah, as a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, that's a lot of work. That's usually adult work. So yeah, it wasn't until probably late middle school that I think there was a sense of safety established for me. Where I could think beyond status and more so focus on like, okay, what are these feelings that I'm feeling regarding people and regarding my identity? So I think by that point, hormones and all the things were kind of raging and crushes started to arise. And then feeling a little dysphoria, not having the word for it, like those feelings started to arise. In terms of how migranthood played into that, I don't know if it clicked until later on, like that there would be intersections. So that probably didn't happen until college, when I started realizing, oh, things are intersecting. Me coming to the US as a migrant, and needing safety, and then as a queer and trans person needing safety, how do these things align? Like I started being able to connect the dots a little bit more. I'm not sure if that's answering your question, Sean. I can ramble a little bit, but
No,
yeah.
I think that that was great, and I'm just wondering. And then you said earlier about being in a state of survival when you want to be thriving, and so that's a long time. If you're thinking you've been in that survival mode since being 5, and so fight or flight, right? Survival is most important, right? And so we don't think about all those other things. We just like, I want to survive. I want to live. I got to live to the next day. I want to protect my family. And these are the things that I need to do. That's heavy for a young person, right? That's a lot of pressure. And so you don't get that opportunity to actually just be a youth and to be a kid, right? Because just like you say, you're put in this adult's place because you're taking responsibility as an adult. And that's rough and that's hard. And so, a lot of times folks say, oh yeah, I knew when I was, 3 years old, or however old we are when we get that awareness of who we are. But it's very different when you're just trying to survive, right? And so I'm wondering just like how that would have shaped you if you weren't put in that predicament, right? And you were able to explore who you were at even a younger age and didn't have to wait till college. Do you feel like there would be like a difference in who you are now if you had that time to express that as a younger child?
So it's interesting that you bring this up. A couple of years ago, my family and I were able to take our first trip back to Chile. All of us at that point had been able to change status to whether it was like a permanent resident or a citizen. So we were all able to go back together. My mom, my dad, and my sister had already gone to Chile separately at different points. I was the last one. So we went, and I think before that trip, I asked myself a similar question that you just asked me. What would my life have been like had I stayed, right? Had crossing borders, crossing oceans not been a part of my life? And when I finally arrived to Chile and during the duration of the stay, I think I would have found some sense of safety more quickly, and I would have probably been able to have taken a little bit more time to figure out what I was needing as a younger kid, right? I would have definitely had a better childhood, probably with a little less fear and anxiety. However, that alternate reality, that alternate universe, I don't know if I would have liked as much. It's hard to say because we can't necessarily live them out and try each life out. But I think having stayed in Chile would have brought its own set of complications, particularly around queerness and transness. I think having had the privilege of growing up here in the States, and this is just my own experience, I'm sure that other folks who are migrant or also Chilean migrants may have like a different feel around it. But at least for me, I feel like, weirdly, I say this with the caveat of like, we're about to enter another 4 years of like a fascist regime. So there's that. But up until then, even with all the fuck shit things that are happening with like the politics in our nation, I feel a bigger sense or a better sense of safety and community here in the States than I think I would have found in Chile. There's more visibility and representation, words that I don't like to throw out because I feel like they're thrown out all the time. But I definitely believe it's true that there is a lot more visibility and representation in the United States and intentionality when it comes to any theme that intersects with queerness and transness, that I think is still, that conversation is still developing in Chile. So yeah, I feel my life in many ways as crappy as it was to grow up in the States as a kid without documents, I prefer who I became here than who I could have become there. So I still sit with that because it feels weird. It feels like icky. But yeah, I think I'm coming to terms with, even if there's a bunch of what ifs, I'm happy with this reality, and I'm happy that migranthood allowed, in some ways, like it allowed me to shape my thought process and thoughtfulness around identities, something I would not have had in Chile. I don't know if I would have been as thoughtful or as critical or would have had the analysis that I have now.
You know, was when I'm thinking and I'm listening to you, and like, you know, not enough folks, at least I don't know, because you do this work, right, where you share folks' story, immigrant stories, right? And so it's kind of like, I think the reason why people choose to come here, right, is that they want their children to be safe, right? They want their children to have a life and have a future different from where they come from, right? And so it's like this idea of like that's, if you think of what the United States is supposed to stand for, not always what is represented once you're actually fucking here. It's just this freedom, right? To do everything that you just said to do, right? To live your life, to raise your children, supposedly in a safe environment, right? To be able to think differently and move differently, and have this idea of who you are as a person. And it's so sad that with the politics now, is like what this place is supposed to represent. And I hate that phrase of making it great again, right? Who the fuck was it great for?
Exactly. Who the fuck gets to say it was great, right? Who do we listen to for that?
Right. And who said it was ever great in the first place? I mean, right? It depends on who's telling the story and who's listening.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I want to ask you, so you discovered yourself when you were in college and you were able to, that space. Did you go away for college?
I did. Yeah,
Okay.
I had the privilege. A lot of stuff happened to make that possible, but yeah, I was able to get a full ride in tuition and board to go to the University of Florida. I don't know how the fuck that happened, honestly. As a deeply spiritual person, I'm like, y'all ancestors, you had our backs, because both my sister and I were able to do that.
Hey, this is Joel Simu, production assistant for Dem Bois Podcast. Our community keeps growing, and we'd love for you to be an even bigger part of it. Have a story that needs to be heard? A powerful moment you'd like to share? Well, we've expanded our newsletter to include more voices from our community, and yours could be next. We're looking for those meaningful snapshots of life, your personal stories and reflections that capture who we are. Think 100 to 200 words that pack a punch. Ready to share your story? Send your writing to me at joel@dembois.org. That's JOEL@dembois.org.
So I want to ask you, so when you went to college and you had that space, so you're away from your family and you were in college, and a lot of folks say this too, like right in colleges, they have those different experiences because you're meeting different people from all over the world. And so when was that moment when you had that idea of who you were and was able to explore that?
So regarding queerness, I was already exploring those themes with myself probably by the time I was in high school. And only with myself. It wasn't a safe place because teenagers suck. And as someone who had been bullied at a younger age too, at least I wanted to maintain a low profile. And the less weird I could make myself, the better, if that made sense, even though I was already weird. Like, I didn't want to add that extra component to it. And very few kids, I went to high school from 2003 to 2007. So during that time, like, being queer isn't what it is now. Pronouns were not a thing. Being able to talk about queerness and your crushes, like, that was an easy way to get bullied. And I know it still is now, but I feel like, back in the day. So I already had some of those ideas coming up for me, the feelings were already there, the crushes were already there, the desires were already there. And so once I was able to go to college and not necessarily have my parents overlooking my things, and just basically having this freedom I had never had before, this freedom I'd never tasted before. I was like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna go fucking balls to the wall. And so I did. And I joined all the queer groups. And by that point, there was a small degree of like dysphoria that was coming up for me, but I didn't know what that meant. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And it was small enough that I could ignore it. So first it was figuring out queer things, figuring out like, okay, are you bi, which is what you would say when you were in high school? Are you gay? Is there a secret third thing? And the secret third thing I learned in college by being in spaces with other people that were like, you know what? There's much more than what you think, than what you've been taught. And it's here, right? So I learned through going to these groups. I also started organizing with other migrant youth in the state of Florida. And we would have state convenings to figure out like state strategies for how to, at that point, it was how to get in-state tuition, how to support getting DACA for folks. So through organizing, I also met other folks throughout the state and even nationally who had the language that I needed, that I wanted to be able to talk about the things that I was feeling. So it kind of all came together more organically towards the end of college. I didn't need to search for it. It came searching for me. And it was also around that time that I started meeting a lot of badass queer organizers who also were trans. And I was like, what the fuck? What is this? All throughout my elementary, middle, and high school that I knew of, I had never met a trans person. And I was just kind of like in a daze when I got to meet so many who were doing really powerful work, who looked like me, who had interests like I did, who lived a life that I wanted. And seeing them made me feel possible. So I gravitated towards that and I wanted to learn more about it. It left me wanting more. So I thank college and I greatly thank the world of organizing for leading me down this path to where I'm at now.
You said you were in high school 2003 to 2007. I was in high school 1995 to 1999. So, damn, don't you ain't gonna say it like that.
Sorry. But you're hitting the 90s.
Yeah. So when you say it was hard for you, just imagine, right? That the difference just by a couple of years, right? And so I play basketball and I also play softball, and most of the folks on the basketball team were identifying as lesbians, but there was like a secret, right? We didn't even want to admit it to each other, and we definitely didn't admit it outward, right? So it was always a secret. And so it would just be like a group of 4 or 5 of us that would hang out, and 2 of them dated. And so it was like this common thing amongst us. But then once you went back in school, you had to act normal, right? Whatever normal is, but so that you're undetected. So I can't even imagine like the way that the kids have it now is not that they have it easier, because you're right, teenagers do suck, but there's, we say visibility equals possibility, and there's more ways with now, especially with social media, where you can see folks that you resonate with, right? And so I think that's so important, like to just see representation. And that's kind of like why we're here, right? Why we share our stories. We're leaving ancestral presence for other folks to know about what trans folks were doing in this moment. So then 20 years from now, somebody can be like, ooh, 2024. Ooh, that's so, they had that same reaction you just said had about 1999. So when you started to really get involved with organizing and just really getting this idea of who you were, that just was just a carry on from high school, junior high school. When you went home, because sometimes parents get scared. I don't want to send my kid to college because they're going to come back different, right? Because you learn different things. And so when you went back home and said, hey, parents, this is who I am, what was their reaction?
Well, friend, so we're going to backtrack a little bit to right before college. I was dating. I met somebody. I got sent for the summer camp to do like school things at a summer camp called Girl State. And I met, I guess, my first girlfriend there. She was my roommate. And, you know, because it was just both of us in the room, we were able to like really be vulnerable and honest about like, hey, I like you. Great. I like you too. What does that mean? And I think it was like either a 3-week or a 6-week summer camp situation. So we bonded a lot over that time. And throughout, so this was the summer right before my senior year. So throughout all of senior year, we covertly like talked, either texting, and I did not have unlimited text, so we had to like figure that out, or like AOL Instant Messenger, and I was like in the family room, and so the computer had to face in a particular way so no one could see the things. But we were connecting for a good bit, and I think my parents were starting to get suspicious. So some suspicions were already arising. My mom already had suspicions before then because of how I dressed, and you know, these flags for her that were just like, there's something here. But I ended up accidentally outing myself towards the end of senior year. I was working at a dollar store with my mom, and I was at the cash register. There was no one there. I had grabbed the receipt and I started writing the name of, I don't know if it was someone else. I think by that point I had broken up with this person, but it was someone else. And I was writing their name with my name in hearts. It was very obviously the name of somebody who was not a guy. And my mom found it and was like, what is this? Was chill about it the first day. And my dad was too the next day. Shit hit the fan, and there was a lot of like guilt put on me of like, why didn't you tell us? And then also, we're disappointed in you. And then also, how do you think this reflects on us? And then also, there were trigger word things, body shaming. So it's because you feel like you're too big or too fat. Because I grew up in a bigger body. You're too big or too fat, and that's why you're not getting the attraction, or you're not attracting these guys. And so there was a whole strategy that was put forward the summer before I went into college to have me lose weight. So we would go to the gym, and it was a whole family thing. And then once I got into college, there was surveillance from my sister, who was 2 years older than me and was also in college. My parents like tasked her to surveil me and make sure that I was, you know, not hanging out with the bad apples. So it was tough. Like I had already come out, but it was very like touch and go. Like I knew that it wasn't, I think there was an expectation for me to change. Right. So the first year of college, there was still that expectation for me to change. I think by the time I was in my second year of college, I actually don't even know what happened. I don't know if my parents started to like more chill with it, or I started having more conversations about it. I really don't know. I think all of that was a blur. Maybe it was too heavy, and that's why I don't remember it. But eventually, I just started doing my thing. I remember one day I came home with a piercing, which to them was like, oh my God, you're gay. You're making it too gay. You're too obvious. And then I had a tattoo. And then I think over time, even though my sister was tasked to do these things for my parents, once she began organizing, and she's the one who brought me into organizing, when she got into organizing and started seeing that there were queer trans people out in the world, and that our sheltered world was so small, we didn't see all of these things. I think she also started like protecting me and was like, no, mom and dad, like, fuck this shit. And she also brought over queer trans friends from her organizing circles to the house. And I think through exposure, my mom specifically started understanding and just being like, all right, fine. My dad was fine with it. So it was a long journey with a lot of lying. And I feel like, unfortunately, for our community, that is something we got to do often to protect ourselves. And I think I had a lot of shame about it, a lot of guilt, which I'm in my adulthood undoing or trying to undo, and trying to be more gentle with myself. Because honestly, if I hadn't done those things, I would have been living such a horrible life. So yeah, sometimes we just gotta do the lying to survive. So yeah, that was how that went. I think over the course of some years, and especially in the past 5 or 6 years, I've been having more conversations with my parents about trans things. So that's the new unexplored terrain. They're cool with all the queer things. They're like, they even walked me down the aisle when I got married, and they're like strong proponents of queer rights, also trans rights. Now they're starting to understand a little bit more. So yeah, I know that's not the case for all of our siblings, and I feel really fortunate that my parents stuck by me and were down to do the work, even though it's taken them some time, more time than I had wished. But I'm proud of them. So
happy for your parents to make that shift. It makes our lives a whole lot easier when you know that that you have people that love you, and especially I want to say, family. We, in our community, we're used to having getting chosen family, but it feels good to have your birth family to support you as well, right? It's just a different type of a feeling to know that, hey, my mom and my dad love me and they support me and was there to, witness your matrimony, right? Like that's a beautiful thing.
Hey y'all, Pink Lady here. I am the producer for Dem Bois Podcast, and I am so excited to tell you about my production company, Pink Lady Productions. We collaborate with creatives like you who are driven to share your message by launching your podcast from A to Z and coaching you through the process. To learn more about our services, check out our website at pinkladyprod.com. That's PINKLADYPROD.com.
And I was just listening to while you were speaking, and I was thinking, like, you've been, because you said having to lie, and right, that's been your life, right? Having to lie to survive, and that's hard. And so how are you able, right now, right? How are you able to kind of maintain your mental health in that way?
So as an uninsured person, it's been a little difficult. It's only this week that I was able to sign up for therapy. Thanks again to family. My sister's like, you know what, you need this. Let me support you. Let me help you. So I'm excited for therapy, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to do deeper work. Up until now, I think the work that I've done, maybe I've been scratching the surface, right? And I do a lot of this, I think through my work, through my art, a lot of soul searching, and questioning different parts of myself. And I think also in relation to my chosen family, I'm able to analyze more about myself, my behaviors, how I show up. Can I show up better? Like, Rommy, you didn't need to lie about that. You're not in survival mode, not in this group, not with these people. You're safe, right? So constantly reminding myself, hey, it's okay. Because I think for me, and I'm sure for many of us, our bodies go into that state first, and we do the things sometimes on autopilot. At least that's what happens to me. And trying to take a second, take a beat, and be like, okay, actually, that's not the situation. It's like, just chill. Let's try this again. This person means you no harm. They love you, they care about you. Or even meeting new people, this is a new experience. Read the room, try to read the cues, but it's not where you were before. So yeah, I think it's been kind of touch and go, for being able to work on past traumas. I'm excited to be able to do more of that work. with more guidance. And day-to-day mental health. I don't know. I'm sure I could be better at it. But I really enjoy cooking. So if I can take some time to do that, it's the sensory part of cooking, being able to touch things and smell things. Even hearing when the knife is cutting through like an onion or something like that, like the whole sensory experience is really nice for me. And working out. So these little moments that I can carve out for myself to be able to create something safe and special for me. Those are the self-care moments. Those are the mental health check-ins that I have for myself. Always open to more, especially if they're free.
Yeah, I'm so glad that your sister stepped up and was like, "Hey, I'm going to help you take advantage of this." I'm a advocate for mental health services and seeing therapy, and I speak openly on the show about I see my therapist every week, and so it's a long journey. And sometimes I feel like I've come a long ways, and then I feel like I got a long ways to go. Right, you got to unpack this lifelong trauma, right, that we have, especially as queer folks. We meet these different challenges within our journeys, right? And that we need to unpack and unlearn some things, and some of the verbal abuse that we get and all of those things, right? So I'm so happy that, you're taking that step. You're able to take that step now and just be vulnerable with your therapist and get the most out of it. But I also like to tell folks too that, therapy is almost like a relationship. If it ain't going to work with that particular therapist, then it ain't gonna work with that particular therapist, and to find one that works for you and clicks is best suited for your personality and your experiences and all of those things, right? Because that's how you get the most out of it, if it's somebody that you can work with, right? And so I want to ask you your name, Rommy. Like, how did that name choose you?
This is actually my birth name. So my mom gave it to me, and apparently there's a backstory to it. My mom loves movies, and would follow celebrities closely. I think her self-care thing. There's a degree of enchantment, for her there. And so, she told me that back in the day, I think she was an actress or a model named Romy Schneider. And she's like, I really, really like that name, but I wanted to make it my own. So I personalized it. And I'm like, Mom, how'd you do that? She's like, I added the extra M. And I was like, go you, go you. And I've always loved my name. I think ever since I was young, I never identified as girl or boy. I'm like, I am this thing. And Romy fits that perfectly. And so when it came down to like, all right, you're realizing you're trans. Like, what does that mean for you? Does that mean you're going to get to choose your name, and what would that name be, and this and that? I toyed around with it a little bit, and I had a name that I had chosen for myself that I was like, oh, this kind of fits. This is cute. But I kept coming back to Romy. I don't know if it's nostalgic. I think for sure I like the way it sounds. I like how it comes, like it rolls off my mouth. I like how it's said in Spanish. And yeah, I ended up just leaving it as is. And I don't know how the conversation came up at some point, but I told my mom, like, I'm really glad you chose this name for me. I think it fits me well. And I think it was around conversations around like gender. And I saw her smiling, like a big beaming smile. I think that was her being like, I see you, even though there were no words for that. So, yeah.
And how do you pronounce your name in Spanish?
Romy.
I like that.
Yeah, I like the rolling of the R. Yeah. I am a fan. So,
I love that. I can't particularly do that, but I love that. That sounds nice. And I like the spelling too, with the 2 M's. So your mom did well with that one. I like that as well.
I will convey the message.
Yes, you're gonna say, "Who the hell is Sean?" Well, no, Sean likes the name, Mom.
Oh, she'll be thrilled.
Yeah. So I wanna ask you, because you are a visual artist, and so I wanna ask you about your work a little bit. So you were featured in the Getty Museum, the Smithsonian Museum, and the Library of Congress, along with other things, right? And so you want to discuss a little bit about your visual art?
So going back to organizing, during that time, I was part of like a student organization that my sister founded at the University of Florida that was specifically working with migrant folks around Gainesville, which is where the school was, and also throughout the state, both documented and undocumented. And the organization needed art support. I was an architecture major and I knew how to do things on the computer and make design things. And so I was like, cool, I will help do that. Because my sister was like, I need help in this organization, do something. So I did. And probably that was the beginning of like what started everything. I got more and more involved in organizing, more and more involved in this organization, and realized like, wow, I actually like this. I like making things. I like making things within the realm of social justice. And once I exited out of college, right, I graduated, I got really sad, super depressed. I didn't have the funds to be able to afford higher education beyond my bachelor's degree. I also didn't have the papers to be able to get an internship or anything like that. So I was like, well, fuck, I did 4 years of this and now like I'm back to square one. So it was really sad. Again, so many things point back to my sister. So shout outs to her. During that time, she had already obtained her citizenship and she created a project. She applied to a grant, created a project. We were all living together by this point once I graduated college. So she created this community project, community initiative that would document human rights abuses in the area that we lived in, which was Southwest Florida. And so she's like, can you help me with the graphics? We're going to do a lot of storytelling. We're going to do a lot of video and audio recordings of people telling their stories. But I want to find a way to disseminate this. And this was 2011. So right when social media was really popping off and people were starting to use it to promote things. So moving past Facebook and into like Instagram world. And so I was like, yeah, okay, I'll start doing things. I'm sad. I think this will help. And so I really like gave myself fully to art. I taught myself how to use Illustrator by looking at, I think, Linda videos. Linda, I think, is the site, and then looking at YouTube videos. And I was like, I can do this. Let me figure it out. And so it started with creating graphics for this project. At that point, too, I was really into photography. So I was photographing the community members whose stories we were collecting, and also started like taking video and like editing video and stuff and like making little shorts for community members. And by that point, the community initiative started getting connected to other larger organizations throughout the state that were doing work with immigrants and immigrant rights. And they were like, oh, Rommy, you do these things. Can you help us do this? Can you help us create a poster for this? Can you help us create a flyer for this? And I was like, yeah, okay. I'm down. And that's how it began. I started building more connections and trust with different organizations within Florida, who then recommended me to other people, or other people saw my work on social media and then started reaching out to me. And yeah, I think I think 2 or 3 years after I graduated college, I realized like, you have a place in this work, right? And not just within like migrant rights. You're queer, you're trans. How can you uplift those stories? And so I got really invested in that. And I got really invested in seeking out folks who shared that identity with me, and was able to find so many. And yeah, I think through through those connections, I was able to make my art richer. And I at least I hope, to have it speak to like a bigger audience.
Hi there, I'm Mike, and I'm the creator of Trans Mass Stories. When I was at the start of my transition, I searched for uplifting stories of people who had questioned their gender identity, gone through their transition, and come out stronger. I needed direction and a light at the end of the tunnel. Trans Mass Stories is my way of paying it forward. It's the resource I wish I'd had, a space full of real, positive, and anonymous transition stories from transmasculine individuals, offering clarity and hope for anyone navigating their journey. If you're on the transmasculine spectrum, I'd love for you to share your story. And if you know someone who could use some direction, send them over to transmaskstories.com to explore dozens of transition stories. All right, that's all. Enjoy the show now. Cheers.
And so how did you translate those stories? So it was just with the videos and photos, and how did that work translate out for you?
Yeah, so initially it was lots of photos and video until I was like, okay, you have some of this technical training from architecture. Try it out, try illustrating things. And that's where I would look to the tutorials online on how to create XYZ things. And I was really inspired by the work of Ernesto Llerena and Julio Salgado, who were putting out a lot of, I think, illustrations at that time. And I was like, this is really cool. I love this medium. So once I got the hang of it, and once I felt like, okay, my work is good enough to put out into the world, I started illustrating more and more. And the bulk of the work that I do now is solely illustration, which is really cool because I'm like, shit, I'm not formally trained for this. I've just been fucking around the past 12 years trying to like figure out what looks good, what doesn't, what tells the story, what captures the essence of what the message is that I or the organizations that I'm working with are wanting to deliver. So yeah, it's been a wild ride. I honestly never thought I could make a career out of this. I don't even know if it is a career, honestly, but I have been doing it for a long time, and I'm really proud of the work that I've done, and I'm really proud of the collaborations I've been a part of, and how many of them are long-standing partnerships at this point, like organizations that have been coming to me 4, 5, 6, 7, some of them 10 years. So to have those relationships with folks who are doing such amazing and groundbreaking work with community, that's just wild to me. And never in a million years did I think I would be doing that work when I was in college or after I graduated. Never crossed my mind.
Yeah, I really believe things happen for a reason. I think we talked about this too. Like just being in certain places and certain times and certain moments. Like sometimes it's just how the universe made it out to be, right? And so I want to ask you. So like, if somebody listening, they like, yo, I want to check out your work, or yo, I want to partner with you and work with you. How can folks? Where can folks go to see some of your work, or even just reach out to you to collaborate with you?
For sure. So I have a website, which is torico.com, where I have pretty much all of the work that I've done in the past 10 years. And there's also like, I think, a contact submission form in there in the event that anybody wants to collaborate on anything. I'm always down. I thrive off of collaboration. And at this point, I think that's my favorite way to create a project. While I can create projects on my own, there's nothing better than to learn from someone else's wisdom. Like I have learned so much through collaboration about different topics and themes that on a day-to-day basis, I probably would never have known about. So there's submission link there. And then also social media, Instagram.
I would definitely plug it into the show notes for folks. So what is next for you? What is next in your life? What are your plans?
Oh, my friend, I do not know. I have I'm a Pisces. And I have basically made it my life to go with the flow. I realize the more I try to control things, the more they blow up in my face. So when it comes to what's next, I actually have no clue, to be honest with you. To a degree, I've been feeling a little wayward from a personal standpoint. Professionally, it waxes and wanes. I think I mentioned earlier that I never thought that this would be a career. And at times it doesn't feel like it, because is it something that's financially stable? Not always. Freelance rarely is. But I imagine what's on the horizon is always going to be some degree of creativity. What form that's going to take? Question mark, question mark. But, if therapy's in the works, hopefully it's going to be something good. Yeah.
Yeah. And you never know the things that therapy may provoke, right? And you may shift. You may say, you know what, I'm going to try to do this, or I may do that. You never know. It's just to be open and to just explore everything new about yourself, right? Because there's always room to grow. There's always room to learn and all of that. So hopefully that you're able to incorporate that in the future. And I look forward to seeing all new things from you.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited. Yeah. I am excited.
So this is the part of the show where I like to ask my guests a random ass question. And I have a list of questions here that has grown to 59. I'm not going to ask you all the questions, but I want you to pick a number between 1 and 59, and I'm going to ask you that question. But before you do that, I want to say that I'm trying something new now. So I want you to take one and then leave one. So I want you to answer a question, but then leave one for a future guest to answer.
Okay. Got it. All right. So I will give you the number. I choose number 33.
Okay, number 33 says, what is your favorite movie?
I love movies so much. So this is a hard one. I used to have a favorite movie for a long time. And it's a little embarrassing to say, but when I watched it in 97, I was like, oh, romance, so much romance. Even though it was like just white people doing things. I loved Titanic for the longest time. That was my go-to movie, and I still watch that shit once a year, at least, because tragic romance on a boat, it's like food for a Pisces. And I also like the gender things where I felt very much like Jack on the outside, but I am Rose on the inside, hardcore. So I was like, okay, as a child, I even thought that. So Titanic, but I think last year a movie came. I think it was last year. Pretty sure it was last year. A movie came out that was called Past Lives. Past Lives is a very, very good movie, and I am sad that it didn't get the Oscar, even though fuck the Oscars. But very, very good movie, and also one that I watch at least once a year.
Past Lives. I'm gonna have to check that out. What is it? What is it about?
Well, it's got migrant trauma in a way that I've never seen migrant trauma injected into a movie. So basically, it is about this young girl who lives in Korea with her family, and they show you a little bit of her life in the beginning. She's probably an early teen. And she had a neighbor boy or a friend who they kind of had a like relationship. And before she left Korea, she and that boy went on a date. It was very clear like there was like some type of chemistry there. Anyways, fast forward, basically it talks about how they reconnect. And there's like a lot of migrant feels that pop up for me. One of the questions that he had asked me before wasn't exactly this, but like what your life had been like had you like not left maybe. So this movie kind of talks a little bit to that. And I appreciate the fact that it follows it's basically 20 years of a relationship with these two people, and they incorporate technology into it. And so I don't know if you ever had moments where you've had like a romantic relationship that's long distance. Back in the day when FaceTime wasn't a thing, you would Skype that person and then fall asleep with a computer, Skype, open. So things like that I'm like, oh, this is really reminiscent of moments of my life. But yeah, it is a movie about possibility, about love, about loss and grief, in ways that I haven't really seen in the past.
I love that. I actually, when you start describing it, I actually have seen a preview for that. And so now that you say it's good, what the hell am I waiting for, right? I need to just watch it. Yeah. I'm going to watch it. Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I saw my favorite movie. I say this, I've said this before, is Love Jones. I don't know if you've ever seen.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's my favorite.
What is
movie.
It that you like about it, if I may ask?
Well, I guess because I got a crush on Nia Long. That's the first thing.
Yeah,
but I just love the love story of, like, I feel like, I don't know, I just love the love of the story of, like, somebody that's meant for you that you just randomly meet and you try to make it work, but it don't work. But then later on in life, y'all come back together because you're like, nah, we supposed to be together. Like, that idea of, like, love. To me, it just seemed like that's how love is supposed to be. People think like love is this perfect story you meet and then you live happily ever after. No, the truth is you go through some shit when you're in love, right? And like you have to move and grow, and then that person leaves and grows, and then you come back and y'all two better. I don't know. I just love that reconnect at the end, right? For folks who haven't seen it, but that little reconnect at the end and that little kiss scene in the rain. Yeah, it's just like in the music in the movie and in the community with them with friends. And so I just always see my life of like, oh, okay, I have this group of friends. And to be honest, I really kind of, to answer that question too, I really love that movie because I went through some things in my life. I was homeless when I was 18. And so for 2.5 years. And so a big part of I always felt I missed out on that part of my life as in my 20s. That's the time when you're going to hang out with friends. You're in college. Like, you build those type of relationships that I never had. And so I love to see that community within them with friends, right? And so I just feel like those relationships and you talking about love and you're experiencing all these things together that I always felt connected to because I never had that. And so that's, I guess now that I'm reflecting on it, that's like another reason why I really, really love that movie. And Nia Long was the first reason, but
no, I hear you. I hard to agree, but that's really sweet. I like that we both kind of land in a particular, not necessarily romantic genre, but I think that there is this degree of like wanting to connect. And I hard agree. The ideal, right, would be to be able to come together with a person or people just generally and grow. Whether grow together, grow apart at some point, but to be able to reconnect. I think that there is something really special about that. I don't know. I am a hopeless romantic. And so that sense of hope for me kind of like really stirs me up. But good movie, really good movie.
Thank you. I'm glad you've seen it because I've mentioned it before and people are like, oh, I haven't seen that. Oh, yeah. Thank you. That's a really good movie. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love movies. Yeah. I love movies.
So what is a question that you want to leave behind for a future guest to answer?
It's a silly question that somebody once asked as an icebreaker. And I've gravitated towards it a lot because I think it's interesting. If you were a ghost, how would you haunt your loved ones? And I've heard like people come up with like really playful things and then some people take it a little deeper. So yeah, I find that to be a pretty fascinating question.
That is funny, actually. If you were a ghost, how would you haunt your loved ones? When I'm writing this question down and I just got a whole bunch of things I would do. But that's a really good question. I'm excited for somebody in the future to answer that. And so I want to ask you, is there any last things that you would like to leave for listeners before we get out of here?
Boy, take care of yourselves the next 4 years and squeeze every little bit of joy out of every moment. I think that.
Yes, we're going to definitely need some joy coming in the future.
Dem Bois, yeah. Amplifying, transmitting color voices, yeah, we here making noise, yeah. Making noise, yeah. Dem Bois, yeah. Dem Bois, yeah.